I was standing in my driveway, staring at the certified letter in my hand, when I realized the HOA president was actually trying to evict me from the house I owned outright. The letter was from Patricia Henderson, president of the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association in suburban Phoenix, Arizona. It detailed 17 violations I'd supposedly committed over the past 3 months. Everything from leaving my trash cans visible from the street to having the wrong shade of beige on my mailbox. The kicker was the final paragraph threatening legal action to force me out of my home if I didn't pay $12,000 in accumulated fines within 30 days. I read it 3 times, my blood pressure rising with each pass. I'd moved to this neighborhood 6 months ago, bought the house with cash after selling my investment portfolio. I was 32 years old, worked from home managing commercial real estate investments, and I'd specifically chosen this place because it seemed quiet. The HOA fees were steep at $400 a month, but the neighborhood was well maintained and the location was perfect for my needs. Apparently, that piece came with a price I hadn't anticipated. I pulled out my phone and called the number listed on the letterhead. A woman answered on the second ring. Riverside Meadows HOA, Patricia speaking. This is Connor Nash from 2847 Riverside Drive. I just received your letter about violations. Oh yes, Mr. Nash. Her voice went cold immediately. I trust you understand the severity of the situation. These violations have been documented with photographic evidence and witnessed by multiple board members. I'd like to see this evidence. And I'd like to understand how leaving my trash cans out on collection day is a violation worth a $1,000 fine. The guidelines clearly state that receptacles must be stored out of sight within 4 hours of collection. Yours were visible until evening on 3 separate occasions. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. The trash company doesn't come until 2 in the afternoon. I work from home. I bring them in around 5 when I take a break. The rule is 4 hours, Mr. Nash. Not 5, not 6, 4. And the mailbox. Association guidelines specify Desert Tan number 43 from the approved paint vendor. Yours is clearly Desert Tan number 42. It's noticeably different. I looked at my mailbox. It was beige, just beige. You're fining me $3,000 because my mailbox is the wrong shade of beige. Rules exist for a reason, Mr. Nash. They maintain property values for everyone in the community. If we let one person slide, where does it end? The letter outlines all 17 violations and the associated fines. Payment is due within 30 days, or we'll proceed with legal action to place a lien on your property and begin eviction proceedings. You can't evict someone from a house they own. Actually, per the CC and Articus you signed when you purchased your property, the association has the right to foreclose on homes with excessive unpaid fines. I suggest you review your documents. Good day, Mr. Nash. She hung up. I stood there in the Arizona heat, sweat starting to bead on my forehead, and felt something snap into place in my mind. This wasn't about violations. This was about control. I'd seen this pattern before in my work with commercial properties. Someone on a power trip, using bureaucracy as a weapon. I went inside and pulled up the HOA documents I'd signed at closing. My real estate attorney had reviewed them, said they were standard. But now, I read them with different eyes. The CC and Articus gave the HOA broad powers, including the ability to fine homeowners and place liens for violations. After 18 months of unpaid fines, they could initiate foreclosure proceedings. I grabbed my laptop and started researching. Patricia Henderson had been HOA president for 8 years. The Riverside Meadows HOA had 47 homes. Monthly fees were $400 per home, meaning roughly $200,000 annually in revenue. The association employed a management company, but Patricia handled day-to-day decisions. I pulled up public records for the neighborhood. Something interesting caught my eye. Patricia lived at 2891 Riverside Drive, just 4 houses down from me. Her property had been refinanced twice in the past 3 years. The current mortgage was with Summit Valley Credit Union. A plan started forming in my mind. Over the next 2 days, I dove deep into research. I contacted a real estate attorney named Marcus Webb, who specialized in HOA disputes. His office was in downtown Phoenix, and he agreed to see me the following afternoon. Marcus was in his mid-50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His office overlooked the city, all glass and steel and leather chairs. "Tell me everything," he said after we shook hands. I laid out the situation, showing him Patricia's letter and the HOA documents. He read through everything carefully, making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This is aggressive," he said finally, "but technically within their authority based on these CC and Articus. The fines are excessive, but not illegal. The threat of foreclosure after 18 months of non-payment is legitimate. So I'm supposed to just pay $12,000 because my trash cans were out too long. You could fight it. We could challenge each violation, argue the fines are punitive rather than reasonable, but that's expensive and time-consuming. HOA cases can drag on for years." He leaned back in his chair. "Or you could pay the fines and be more careful going forward." "There's a third option," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "What if I told you I'm considering buying property in the neighborhood, multiple properties potentially? The HOA board would still have authority over any properties you own. What if I told you I'm specifically interested in acquiring the mortgages of current board members?" Marcus set down his pen slowly. "That would be an interesting strategy. If you held the mortgage on a board member's home, you'd have significant leverage. But acquiring specific mortgages isn't easy. Most are held by banks and sold in bundles." "Most," I agreed, "but not all. Some smaller credit unions hold their mortgages individually. And some are willing to sell if the price is right." He studied me for a long moment. "What exactly do you do for a living, Mr. Nash?" "I invest in commercial real estate, strip malls, office buildings, storage facilities. I've got contacts at banks and credit unions throughout Arizona. I know how to structure deals." "And you're willing to buy a residential mortgage just to get leverage over an HOA president?" "I'm willing to buy a residential mortgage to protect my property rights and teach someone about overreach," I corrected. "Consider it a learning opportunity for everyone involved." Marcus smiled for the first time. "I like you, Mr. Nash. Let's talk strategy." We spent 2 hours going over the details. Marcus explained that if I acquired Patricia's mortgage, I wouldn't automatically have any power over her as long as she made her payments. But it would give me insight into her financial situation and potentially create leverage down the road. More importantly, it would send a message. I left his office with a plan and a new attorney on retainer. That evening, I called my contact at Summit Valley Credit Union. Her name was Rachel Morrison, and we'd done business before when I was acquiring a small shopping center that had a construction loan through her institution. "Connor Nash, it's been a while," she said warmly. "What can I do for you?" "I need information about a residential mortgage your credit union holds. 2891 Riverside Drive in the Riverside Meadows development." "That's an unusual request. May I ask why?" "I'm having issues with the homeowner who happens to be my HOA president. I'd like to explore options for acquiring the note." There was a pause. "Connor, You know I can't just give out information about customer accounts. I'm not asking for details. I'm asking if Summit Valley would be willing to sell that particular note if the price was right. I know you've been looking to clean up your residential portfolio and focus on commercial lending. Another pause, longer this time. Let me look into this and get back to you. No promises. That's all I ask. She called me back the next morning. The note in question has a principal balance of $342,000. The borrower has been late on payments 6 times in the past 18 months. We've sent warning letters. Honestly, it's not one of our better performing assets. What would it take for Summit Valley to sell? We'd want the full principal plus an administrative fee. Call it $350,000. And we'd need the transaction structured properly so we're not running afoul of any regulations. Done. Have your legal team draw up the paperwork. I'll have my attorney review it. How fast can we close? If there are no complications, 2 weeks, maybe 3. Make it 2. I'll pay an extra $5,000 for expedited processing. You're serious about this? Very serious. We hung up, and I immediately called Marcus to set the legal wheels in motion. Then I sat back and waited for Patricia's next move. It came 3 days later in the form of another letter, this one even more aggressive than the first. I had 24 days remaining to pay my fines. The letter helpfully included a payment schedule showing how my debt would increase with interest and late fees if I didn't comply. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on the mortgage acquisition. The paperwork was complicated. I had to set up an LLC to hold the note, provide proof of funds, and navigate various banking regulations. Marcus earned his retainer handling the legal minutiae. But slowly, everything fell into place. 12 days after my conversation with Rachel, I signed the final documents. I now owned Patricia Henderson's mortgage. The timing was perfect. I had 18 days left on Patricia's ultimatum. I decided to wait. During those 18 days, I received 2 more letters from the HOA. The tone escalated from stern to threatening. The third letter, which arrived with 12 days remaining on the deadline, informed me that the board had voted unanimously to proceed with legal action if payment wasn't received. I wondered if Patricia had any idea what was coming. With 5 days left on the deadline, I received a certified letter informing me that the HOA had placed a lien on my property. The letter stated that this was my final warning. If payment wasn't received within 5 business days, they would begin foreclosure proceedings. That evening, I drafted my own letter. It was addressed to Patricia Henderson, personally and as HOA president. It was brief and professional. It informed her that, as of 12 days prior, I had acquired the mortgage on her property at 2891 Riverside Drive from Summit Valley Credit Union. It noted that her payment history showed 6 late payments in the past 18 months, which technically constituted a pattern of default. It stated that while I had no intention of foreclosing as long as payments continued, I thought she should be aware of the change in ownership of her note. The letter went on to suggest that perhaps we should meet to discuss the recent HOA violations and fines, as I felt there might be room for a more reasonable resolution. I ended by noting that I looked forward to being a cooperative member of the Riverside Meadows community and hoped we could establish a more positive working relationship. I sent it certified mail, requiring signature. Patricia signed for it the next afternoon. She called me within 2 hours. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "This is Connor." "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Her voice was shaking, either with rage or fear or both. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "You know damn well who this is. Patricia Henderson. You bought my mortgage." "Oh, hello, Patricia." "Yes, I did. Summit Valley was looking to sell, and I'm always interested in acquiring performing notes. Your property is lovely. I'm sure you'll continue making your payments on time. This is harassment. This is retaliation. I'll sue you. For what? Making a legal real estate investment. Patricia, I buy and sell notes all the time. It's what I do. The fact that you happen to be my HOA president is just coincidence. Bullshit. You did this because of the violations. The violations you claim I committed. The ones with the excessive fines that seem designed to punish rather than correct. Those violations. Silence on the other end. I think we should meet, I continued. Discuss things face to face. Maybe we can find a resolution that works for everyone. There's nothing to discuss. The fines stand. The lien stands. Patricia, let me be clear. I have no desire to foreclose on your home. I'm not that kind of person. But I do think there's a conversation to be had about reasonable enforcement of HOA rules and what constitutes genuine violations versus nitpicking. Don't you? More silence. I'll be home tomorrow afternoon, I said. Why don't you stop by around 3? We can talk this through like adults. I'm not coming to your house. Then pick a neutral location. The coffee shop on Camelback Road, 3 o'clock tomorrow. I could hear her breathing, sharp and angry. Fine, 3 o'clock, but this doesn't change anything. We'll see, I said and hung up. The next day I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. It was a local place called Desert Brews, popular with the neighborhood crowd. I ordered an iced coffee and took a table near the back where we could talk privately. Patricia arrived exactly at 3. She was in her early 50s, blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a cream-colored blouse and navy slacks. Her face was set in hard lines. She sat down across from me without ordering anything. Let's get this over with, she said. Would you like coffee, my treat? I don't want anything from you. I sipped my drink. Okay, so here's the situation as I see it. You've hit me with $12,000 in fines for what amounts to minor, debatable violations. You've threatened to foreclose on my property. You've made it clear you see me as a problem that needs to be dealt with. You are a problem. You flagrantly violate community standards. I put my trash cans out on trash day and bring them in after work. I painted my mailbox the same color as every other mailbox on the street. These aren't violations, Patricia. This is you exercising power because you can. Her jaw tightened. The rules apply to everyone. Do they? I pulled the records. In the past year, you've issued fines to 12 different homeowners. Total revenue from fines was $47,000. That's separate from the regular HOA fees. Where does that money go? That's HOA business. I'm a homeowner in the HOA. It's my business too. The annual budget shows normal operating expenses of about $160,000. With fees bringing in roughly $200,000, that leaves $40,000 for reserves and improvements. But you're pulling in another $47,000 in fines. That's a lot of money, Patricia. We use it for neighborhood improvements, such as, that's detailed in the annual report. I read the annual report, it's vague. General maintenance, administrative costs, legal fees, not much detail. She stood up. If you have questions about HOA finances, you can bring them up at the next board meeting. This conversation is over. Sit down, Patricia. Something in my tone made her pause. Sit down and let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to go back to the board and recommend that my fines be reviewed by an independent third party. Someone who's not on a power trip. Those fines are going to be reduced to reasonable amounts or eliminated entirely. The lien on my property is going to be removed. Or what? You'll foreclose on my house. Based on what? I'm current on my payments. You've been late 6 times in 18 months. Your mortgage documents include an acceleration clause. If the note holder determines there's a pattern of late payment that suggests inability to meet obligations, they can demand full payment of the remaining balance. Her face went pale. You wouldn't. I don't want to, but I will if you force my hand. Here's what I'd prefer. I'd prefer to live in my house in peace. I'd prefer to have a reasonable HOA that enforces legitimate rules without using fines as a revenue stream. I'd prefer we all act like adults. She sat back down slowly. You can't prove the fines are unreasonable. Actually, I can. I've had my attorney review every fine issued in the past 3 years. We found a pattern. Newer residents get hit harder than established ones. People who don't attend board meetings get fined more frequently. And interestingly, homes that have filed complaints about HOA management seem to have sudden spikes in violations discovered. That's not true. I have a spreadsheet. Want to see it? I pulled out my phone and brought up the document I'd spent hours compiling. Addresses, dates, fines, and cross-reference data showing exactly what I described. Patricia stared at the screen, her face losing more color. This is what happens when you mess with someone who understands data, I said quietly. I can prove a pattern of targeted enforcement. I can show that the HOA board, under your leadership, has been using violations and fines as a weapon. How do you think that would play out in court if I decided to file a lawsuit? We were just enforcing the rules. No, Patricia, you were abusing your authority. And now you're facing consequences. She looked at me with something close to hatred. What do you want? I already told you. Review and eliminate the bogus fines. Remove the lien. And going forward, I want the HOA to enforce rules reasonably and consistently. No more targeting. No more power trips. And my mortgage. Keep making your payments on time and you'll never hear from me about it. This doesn't have to be adversarial. She stood up again, this time with her purse clutched tight. I'll bring it to the board. You do that, and Patricia. I'll be attending the next board meeting. I'm going to start paying very close attention to HOA operations. She left without another word. I sat there finishing my coffee, wondering if I'd just made an enemy for life, or if she'd actually see reason. The next board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. It was held in the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance. I'd never attended before, but according to the HOA bylaws, all meetings were open to homeowners. I arrived 10 minutes early. The meeting room was set up with a long table at the front for the board members and rows of folding chairs for attendees. Usually, these meetings had maybe 5 or 6 homeowners show up. Tonight, there were 23 people in the audience. Word had spread. Patricia sat at the center of the table, flanked by 4 other board members. I recognized 2 of them from the neighborhood. There was Douglas Fleming, a retired accountant who lived on Maple Court. Sandra Martinez, a real estate agent with a house backing up to the golf course. The other 2 I didn't know. Patricia called the meeting to order at 7 sharp. Her voice was professional, controlled. She ran through the standard agenda items: approval of previous meeting minutes, treasurer's report, landscape maintenance updates. Then she got to new business. We have a matter to address regarding violations and fines, she said, not looking at me. It's been brought to the board's attention that there may be some inconsistency in how we've been enforcing community standards. A murmur went through the audience. The board has reviewed recent fines, and we've decided to implement a new policy. Going forward, first-time violations will receive a warning rather than an immediate fine. Fines will be assessed only for repeated violations or severe infractions that impact property values or safety. Douglas, the retired accountant, frowned. What about existing fines? Patricia's jaw tightened. The board will review all fines issued in the past 6 months on a case-by-case basis. Where appropriate, we'll reduce or eliminate charges. Case-by-case based on what criteria? I asked from the audience. All eyes turned to me. Patricia met my gaze. Based on the severity of the violation, whether it was corrected, and whether the fine amount is proportional to the infraction. And who makes that determination? The board. The same board that issued the fines in the first place. Sandra, the real estate agent, leaned forward. Mr. Nash, we understand you have concerns. We're trying to address them. I appreciate that, but I'd feel more comfortable with an independent review. Maybe by an attorney specializing in HOA law, someone who can ensure the process is fair. Patricia's knuckles were white where she gripped her pen. That would be expensive. Not as expensive as a lawsuit alleging selective enforcement and abuse of authority. The room went dead silent. Douglas cleared his throat. I think Mr. Nash has a point. If there's a perception of bias, an independent review would help restore trust. One of the other board members, a woman whose name I didn't know, nodded. It might be worth the investment. We could use HOA reserve funds. Patricia looked like she'd bitten into something sour, but she was outnumbered. Fine. We'll engage an independent attorney to review fines issued in the past 6 months. Are there any other concerns? Yes, I said, standing up. I'd like to see detailed financial reports. Income from both regular fees and fines and itemized expenses. The annual report is too vague. The treasurer provides financial reports at each meeting, Patricia said. 1-page summaries. I want details. Every homeowner should know exactly how their money is being spent. Several people in the audience nodded. A man 3 rows back spoke up. I'd like to see that too. I've been paying $400 a month for 5 years. That's $24,000. I'd like to know where it goes. Others chimed in. Within minutes, Patricia was facing a roomful of homeowners demanding transparency. She finally held up her hand. The board will prepare detailed financial reports for the next meeting. Anything else? I sat back down. That's all for now. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, but the tension never fully dissipated. When it finally adjourned, several homeowners approached me. Thank you for speaking up, said a woman I recognized from 3 streets over. I got fined $1,500 last year for having a crack in my driveway. I had it repaired within a week, but they never rescinded the fine. Same here, said an older man. $2,000 because my fence was 6 inches too tall. The fence was built by the previous owner. I didn't even know it was wrong. Story after story. Patricia and her board had been squeezing money out of homeowners for years, and no one had challenged them. Until now, over the next 2 weeks, things started changing. The independent attorney Patricia hired was named Jennifer Kowalski, and she was thorough. I'd actually called her myself before the board meeting to introduce myself and explain the situation. She knew exactly what to look for. Her review found that out of 112 fines issued in the past 6 months, 83 were either excessive, unjustified, or both. My $12,000 in fines was reduced to $400 for one legitimate violation, where I'd left a ladder visible from the street for 3 days while doing roof maintenance. I paid it without complaint. The lien on my property was removed. Other homeowners saw similar reductions. The woman with the driveway crack got her entire fine eliminated. The man with the tall fence got his reduced to $200 with a year to bring the fence into compliance. Jennifer's report also noted concerns about how fine revenue was being tracked and spent. She recommended a full financial audit. The board had no choice but to agree. That's when things got interesting. The audit was conducted by an outside accounting firm. It took 3 weeks. When the results came back, they were explosive. Over the past 4 years, Patricia had been skimming money from the HOA. Not huge amounts at any one time, just $500 here, $1,000 there. Payments to vendors that didn't exist. Reimbursements for expenses that were inflated or completely fabricated. In total, she'd taken about $47,000. The audit report was presented at an emergency board meeting. I was there, along with 30 other homeowners. The room was packed. When the accountant finished presenting his findings, the room erupted. People were shouting, demanding answers. Patricia sat at the front table, her face ashen. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice barely audible. "There's been a misunderstanding." "The documentation is clear," the accountant said. "We can trace every fraudulent transaction." Douglas, the retired accountant, looked sick. "Patricia, how could you?" "I didn't. This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like, and everyone knew it. Sandra, the real estate agent, stood up. "I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove Patricia Henderson as board president and from the board entirely." "Seconded," Douglas said immediately. The vote was unanimous among the remaining board members. Patricia stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out of the meeting without another word. But the story didn't end there. 2 days later, I got a call from a detective with the Phoenix Police Department. His name was Detective Raymond Torres, and he wanted to talk about the HOA situation. "We've received a complaint about embezzlement," he said when we met at his office downtown. "The HOA board filed a report. Your name came up as someone who might have information." I told him everything. The violations, the fines, my investigation, the mortgage purchase, and the audit findings. He took notes throughout, nodding occasionally. "You did good work here, Mr. Nash. Made our job easier. We're opening a criminal investigation." "What happens to Patricia?" "If the evidence supports charges, we'll arrest her and let the DA decide on prosecution. This is white-collar crime. Embezzlement, fraud, possibly tax evasion depending on what she did with the money." "What about the HOA? Can we get the money back?" "That's civil court territory. You'd need to sue her, but if she's convicted criminally, it strengthens your case." The investigation moved quickly. Within a week, Detective Torres had everything he needed. Patricia was arrested at her home on a Thursday morning. The charges included embezzlement, fraud, and theft by extortion based on the pattern of excessive fines. The arrest made the local news. "HOA president arrested for embezzling thousands," read the headline in the Arizona Republic. My name wasn't mentioned, which was fine by me. What happened next surprised everyone. Patricia's husband filed for divorce within days of her arrest. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal. She'd plead guilty to embezzlement and fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence and agreement to make restitution. She was sentenced to 18 months in jail and 5 years probation. She was ordered to repay the $47,000 she'd stolen, plus an additional $30,000 in penalties and legal fees. There was just one problem. Patricia didn't have the money. Her bank accounts were nearly empty. Her credit cards were maxed out. And she still owed $342,000 on her house, which I now owned the mortgage on. Her attorney called me 3 weeks after the sentencing. "Mr. Nash, I'm representing Patricia Henderson. I know there's bad blood between you, but I'm hoping we can work something out." "I'm listening." "Patricia needs to sell her house. The proceeds will go toward her restitution payments, but with the current market and her mortgage balance, there's not much equity. We're hoping you might be willing to negotiate on the payoff amount." I thought about it for a long moment. Patricia had tried to force me out of my home over petty violations. She'd abused her authority, stolen from her neighbors, and created an environment of fear in what should have been a peaceful community. But she was also about to lose everything: her freedom, her marriage, her home, her reputation. "Tell Patricia I'll accept a short sale," I said finally. "If she can find a buyer, I'll take whatever the house sells for as payment in full on the mortgage. She won't owe me anything beyond that." "That's very generous, Mr. Nash. It's practical. I don't want to own that house. I just want this situation resolved." The house went on the market and sold within 3 weeks for $310,000. After real estate commissions and closing costs, I netted about $290,000. I lost about $60,000 on the deal, but I didn't care. It was worth it to close that chapter. Patricia went to jail. Her house sold. Her husband moved to Tucson with their 2 college-aged kids, and the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. The HOA elected a new board. Douglas Fleming became president. Sandra Martinez stayed on as vice president. They brought in 3 new members, including me. I'd been nominated by a group of homeowners who felt I'd stood up for the community. I wasn't sure I wanted the position, but Marcus, my attorney, convinced me. "You started this," he said. "You should help finish it. Make sure the HOA actually functions the way it's supposed to." So I joined the board. We implemented new policies. Violations got warnings before fines. Fines were reasonable and proportional. We published detailed financial reports every month. We held quarterly meetings where homeowners could voice concerns. We also hired a professional management company to handle day-to-day operations. No more board members making unilateral decisions. The neighborhood transformed. Property values actually increased because people felt good about living there again. We had neighborhood barbecues. People talked to each other. The HOA became what it was supposed to be, a way to maintain the community, not control it. 6 months after Patricia's sentencing, I was working in my home office when my doorbell rang. I answered it to find a woman in her 20s standing on my porch. She had Patricia's bone structure, same narrow nose and high cheekbones. "Mr. Nash, I'm Emily Henderson, Patricia's daughter." "Hello, Emily. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to thank you for the short sale. My mom's attorney said you didn't have to do that. It was the right thing to do. My mom made a lot of mistakes. She knows that now. But losing everything, it's been hard on our family. The fact that you showed some mercy, that you didn't make it worse than it had to be, it meant something." I didn't know what to say to that. "I'm not asking you to forgive her," Emily continued. "I'm not sure I've forgiven her yet, but I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family is like her, and I wanted to say thank you." "You're welcome. How is she doing?" "As well as can be expected. She's got about 10 months left on her sentence if she gets good behavior credit. She's been going to therapy, trying to figure out why she did what she did. Control issues, the therapist says. She got some power and didn't know how to handle it responsibly." "That makes sense." Emily shifted her weight. "Can I ask you something? Why did you go to all that trouble? Buying the mortgage, investigating the finances, all of it. You could have just paid the fines and moved on." "I thought about that. Because it was wrong. Because someone had to stand up. And because I had the resources and knowledge to do something about it. If I hadn't, she'd still be abusing her position, still be stealing from people." "I guess that's true." Emily glanced back at her car parked at the curb. "I should go. I just wanted to say thank you in person." "Take care of yourself, Emily." She nodded and walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, thinking about how one person's actions ripple out, affecting so many others. Life in Riverside Meadows continued. I stayed on the HOA board for 2 years, then stepped down when I felt things were stable. Douglas did a good job as president, steady and fair. The neighborhood thrived. I still live in that house on Riverside Drive. My mailbox is still whatever shade of beige it was when I painted it. Nobody's measured it against approved color samples. My trash cans go out on collection day and come in when I get around to it. Nobody's taking photographs or documenting violations. The monthly HOA fees still get paid. The common areas are maintained. The rules are enforced when they need to be, with common sense and proportionality. It's what an HOA should be. Sometimes I think about Patricia, about how she went from being a homeowner who probably started on the board with good intentions to someone who let power corrupt her judgment. I wonder if she thinks about what she lost, what she threw away for $47,000 and the feeling of control. I hope she learned something from it. I hope Emily and her siblings weren't too damaged by watching their mothers fall. Mostly, I hope other HOA boards out there learn from this story, that they understand the responsibility that comes with authority over other people's homes and lives, that they remember an HOA exists to serve the community, not rule it. As for me, I learned that sometimes you have to fight back. That there's a difference between being confrontational and standing up for what's right. That knowledge and resources can be powerful tools, but they have to be used responsibly. I also learned that revenge isn't as satisfying as justice. I could have made things much worse for Patricia. I could have foreclosed immediately, could have pursued her more aggressively in civil court, could have tried to maximize her losses. But that wouldn't have made me a better person. It would have just made me like her, using my power to hurt someone because I could. The real victory wasn't in destroying Patricia. It was in fixing a broken system, in making the neighborhood better for everyone, in showing that you can stand up to bullies without becoming one yourself. A year after Emily's visit, the HOA threw a neighborhood block party. It was a beautiful Arizona evening, warm but not hot, with a breeze coming down from the mountains. We closed off 2 streets and set up tables and grills. Someone brought a sound system and played music. Kids ran around playing tag while adults stood in clusters talking and laughing. I was manning one of the grills, flipping burgers, when Douglas came over with a beer in each hand. He offered me one. "Hell of a party," he said, looking around at the crowd. "Yeah, it turned out great. Remember when you first showed up at that board meeting?" I thought Patricia was going to have a stroke right there at the table. I laughed. She wasn't happy. "Best thing that could have happened to this neighborhood, you standing up to her. I should have done it years ago, but I was too comfortable. Didn't want to rock the boat." "You did the right thing when it mattered. That's what counts." Douglas took a sip of his beer. "You know what the crazy thing is? Property values are up 18% since Patricia left. Turns out people will pay more to live somewhere they don't feel harassed. Imagine that." We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the party. "You going to run for the board again next year?" Douglas asked. "No, I think I'm done with HOA politics. That's your territory now." "Fair enough. But if we ever need someone to stand up to corporate overreach or government bureaucracy, I know who to call." I grinned. "Just as long as it doesn't involve measuring mailbox colors." The party went late into the evening. As it wound down and people started heading home, several neighbors stopped by to say thanks for organizing it. We'd all contributed, but as a board member, I got credit. Walking back to my house around 11, the street quiet now except for a few people finishing cleanup, I felt something I hadn't felt in the 2 years since I'd moved to Riverside Meadows. I felt at home, not just because I owned the house, but because I was part of a community. A real community, where people looked out for each other and treated each other with respect. That's what the fight with Patricia had really been about. Not the fines or the violations or even the embezzlement. It was about whether this would be a place where people could actually live, or just a collection of houses ruled by petty tyranny. We'd chosen the former. and it had made all the difference. I let myself into my house, locked the door behind me, and stood in my kitchen looking out at the backyard. The pool lights were on, casting blue ripples across the water. Beyond my fence, I could see lights from other houses, families settling in for the night. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my attorney. Saw the article about your neighborhood's turnaround in the Republic. Nice work. Drinks next week, I typed back. Sure. I'm buying. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. I poured myself a glass of water and sat down at my kitchen table, pulling up my laptop. I had work to do in the morning, a commercial property deal in Scottsdale that needed attention. But tonight, I let myself enjoy the victory. Not the victory over Patricia, but the victory of proving that ordinary people can make a difference when they stand up. That systems can be fixed. That communities can heal. The Riverside Meadows HOA still exists. It probably always will. But now it serves its purpose, maintaining common areas, enforcing reasonable rules, and bringing neighbors together. Patricia served her sentence and was released after 14 months. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to New Mexico to live with her sister. Started over somewhere no one knew her story. I hope she found peace. I hope she learned and grew from her mistakes. But mostly, I hope she never gets near an HOA board again. As for me, I'm still here in my house with the wrong shade of beige mailbox. Still putting my trash cans out on collection day. Still living my life without someone documenting every minor imperfection. And when I see my neighbors, we wave. We chat. We talk about the weather and sports and our plans for the weekend. Nobody's taking photographs. Nobody's measuring anything. Nobody's wielding authority like a weapon. That's the real ending to this story. Not dramatic confrontations or legal victories, but simple normalcy. The ability to live in your own home without fear that someone's looking for reasons to punish you. It's what everyone deserves. It's what we fought for, and it's what we won. Sometimes, late at night when I'm working in my office, I think about that first letter from Patricia. The one threatening to evict me for violations. The one that started everything. I keep it in a file folder labeled Lessons Learned. Because it did teach me lessons. About power and responsibility. About standing up versus backing down. About fighting smart instead of fighting hard. Most importantly, it taught me that your home is worth fighting for. Not just the physical structure, but the peace and security that comes with it. The right to live without unreasonable interference. That's not just an HOA issue. It's a human issue. We all need spaces where we feel safe, where we can relax, where we don't have to perform or defend ourselves constantly. For most people, that space is home. And anyone who threatens that, whether through abuse of HOA authority or any other means, needs to be stopped. I'm glad I had the resources and knowledge to stop Patricia. I'm glad I could help fix the system she'd corrupted. But I'm also aware that most people don't have those advantages. Most people can't just buy someone's mortgage or hire attorneys or conduct detailed financial investigations. That's why it's important that those of us who can stand up actually do it. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who can't. That's the real lesson from Riverside Meadows. One person standing up can change everything, but only if they actually stand. I stood. I fought. And we won. Not because I was special or heroic, but because I refused to be bullied and had the tools to fight back effectively. Now, 3 years later, life is good. The neighborhood is healthy. The HOA functions properly. People are happy. And my mailbox is still the wrong shade of beige. Nobody cares. That's how it should be. That's how it always should have been. And that's how it's going to stay, as long as I live here and have any say in the matter. The HOA tried to evict me for violations. Instead, They got a lesson in why you shouldn't abuse power, why communities matter more than control, and why sometimes the person you're targeting has resources you never expected. I bought Patricia's mortgage not out of revenge, but out of strategy. It gave me leverage. It made her think twice. It opened the door to real change. Was it aggressive? Yes. Was it necessary? Given Patricia's refusal to back down, I believe it was. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat if the situation called for it, because homes matter. Communities matter. Standing up to bullies matters. And sometimes you have to play hardball to protect what's yours. Just make sure you're playing to fix things, not just to hurt people. That's the difference between justice and revenge. I chose justice. The neighborhood is better for it. And I sleep well at night knowing I did the right thing, even when it was hard. That's the ending. Not perfect, not dramatic, but real, just like life, just like home, just like it should be.